Today we're going to get into what is in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that was passed by the U.S. House on May 22nd, 2025, which is now in the U.S. Senate. The U.S. Senate members or senators from the U.S. Senate were working feverishly over this weekend, and they're still working this weekend to go through the procedural process to advance this bill so that it can get another vote and eventually wind up on President Trump's desk for signature. The initial goal was to have it on the president's desk for signature by July 4th. We may or may not meet that deadline, depending on how many snags we encounter in the U.S. Senate between now and then. So, listen, without any further ado, we're going to get into what's actually in the U.S. House version of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, right? The text that I'm reading from on my computer screen will be included in the description block of the video, so you can check it out yourself and discern for yourself whether or not this One Big Beautiful Bill Act is in the best interest of the American First agenda and hardworking U.S. citizens across the nation. Just read off the couple of sentences here. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act, often referred to as Trump's Big Beautiful Bill, is a comprehensive legislative package passed by the U.S. House of Representatives on May 22nd, 2025 by a narrow vote, doesn't matter, it passed, of 215, which is the Republican number of votes, and versus 214, which was the Democratic number of votes. It aims to enact key priorities of President Donald Trump's second-term agenda, focusing on tax cuts, spending reductions, border security, and other policy changes. So let's get into it. So the tax provision portion of the bill. Again, this is the House version of it, right? The extension of Trump's 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act makes permanent the individual income and estate tax cuts from Trump's 2017 TCJA, which was set to expire at the end of 2025. I believe it is set to expire 31 December 2025. Without this extension, taxpayers would face an estimated $4 trillion tax increase. We don't want that. It also prevents an average tax hike of $1,700 for American families, equivalent to 9 weeks of groceries. Delivers an additional $1,300 tax cuts for the average American family, and up to $13,300 more in take-home pay for a family with two children. Workers could see wage increases of up to $1,200. New tax cuts and incentives. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime pay, auto loan interest deduction on your tax forms. Right, when you file your taxes, you can use, as long as the automobile is American made. Increased in the standard deduction. I believe it's $12,500 now for a married couple. But they're looking to increase it to $16,000 per marriage couple. Child tax credit increases the credit from $2,000 to $2,500 per child for 2025 to 2028, benefiting over 40 million families. Seniors tax relief provides a temporary $4,000 increase in the standard deduction for individuals 65 and older from the years 2025 to 2028, and up to $450 in additional tax relief. Trump investment accounts creates savings accounts for newborns with $1,000 federal contribution for children born between 2024 and 2028. Parents can contribute up to $5,000 annually with funds available at age 18 for education, job training, or home purchases, taxed at long-term capital gains rates. Scholarship tax credit offers a $5,000 tax credit for donations to scholarship granting organizations, though this requires significant administrative oversight. State and local tax deduction, also known as SALT, increases the SALT deduction cap from $10,000 to $40,000 for married couples with incomes of up to $500,000, with a 1% annual increase over 10 years. We're getting into the business and manufacturing incentives of the bill. Small business deductions increases the Section 199 alpha deduction for small businesses from 20% to 23%, making it permanent, which is expected to create over 1 million jobs annually and generate $750 billion in economic growth. Full expensing renews 100% immediate expensing for equipment, machinery, research and development, and new factories, encouraging domestic production. That's what we want, right? You look at cities like Detroit. You want to bring the car manufacturing business and efforts back to Michigan. Opportunity zones permanently renews incentives to drive over $100 billion in investment and create over 1 million jobs in rural and distressed communities. Lower corporate tax rates maintains competitive corporate tax rates to boost U.S. investment and innovation, though a proposed 15% rate was noted as not addressing structural corporate tax-based issues. Right? So from a individual tax standpoint, we're winning there. They went down to business. All of this, what I just read, is basically encouraging companies to come back to, they call it reshoring, to come back to the United States and fire up manufacturing that will increase job growth within the United States, innovation with the United States, and most importantly, really increasing tax revenue for state and federal government, because the more people work and produce an income, the more that income is taxed based on how those individual families file their taxes. Spending and budget provisions, spending cuts. All right, this is some contentious areas that we're about to get into now, right? Medicaid reduces Medicaid spending by nearly $700 billion over 10 years through work requirements for able-bodied recipients and restrictions to eliminate benefits for an estimated 1.4 million undocumented immigrants, which basically means illegal aliens, right? You don't want people scamming the system. You want people who actually need Medicaid, that are unable to work, that are unable to fend for themselves, to get this federal money, and not have able-bodied people who are able to work but choose not to, and illegal aliens. This thing prevents fraud from happening. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as food stamps, cuts $267 billion over 10 years by requiring states to cover 5% of benefit costs and 75% of administrative costs starting in 2028. Right? Really it boils down to, if you're receiving Medicaid and SNAP, you're going to have to work for it, right? You're going to have to really prove that you're authorized to receive this funding. Green energy subsidies repeals or phases out clean energy tax credits from the Biden era, saving an estimated $500 billion annually. Student loan bailouts cancels Biden's student loan forgiveness programs, because look, when you sign your name on a dotted line and you promise to pay back something, The federal government at this point is looking to individuals to hold up their end of the bargain. Overall deficit reduction includes 1.6 trillion in mandatory spending cuts, the largest in U.S. history. Right, so we'll stop there. Border security, immigration, which is another campaign promise of President Donald J. Trump, allocates $46.5 billion for border wall construction, $45 billion for immigration detention facilities, $14 billion for deportation operations, and $4.1 billion to hire 10,000 new Border Patrol agents by 2029. Imposes a tax on remittance sent by immigrants to their home countries, charges $3,500 for families to reunite with unaccompanied minors, and a minimum of $1,000 asylum seeking application fees. Defense and infrastructure, another area. Air traffic control modernization. Boy, we do need it with all the aircraft incidents in the air and on the ground. Air traffic control equipment and processes need to be updated. Air traffic control modernization, invest $12.5 billion to update the FAA systems, addressing staffing shortages and outdated technology. Allocates $256.7 million for capital repairs and maintenance of the John F. Kennedy Center. Increases funding to enhance maritime border security, blocking illegal drugs and migrants, and protect Arctic sovereignty to the Coast Guard. Other spending, expands health savings accounts and codifies Trump-era health coverage flexibility policies, enhances 529 savings accounts for education, and support school choice initiatives, including the Educational Choice for Children's Act. This is important because right now, school choice is rare in state governments, and especially the federal government. I don't think school choice is federalized. It's state by state. But for the most part, if you want to send your child to a better school, you got to have the money to do it. All right. And then it gets into controversial provisions and stuff like that. But that's really the brass tacks of what's in the House version of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. We are going to tune into Fox News on an update on where the bill stands in the Senate as we speak.
This is a Fox News Alert. I'm Chanley Painter. You're taking a live look at the Senate floor right now, where the chamber just passed a key procedural vote to begin debate on President Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill. But the vote did.
Hey, I just want to stop it right here. They spelled the word procedural wrong, but they later corrected if you notice it.
Come without lots of drama. Let's talk about it on Capitol Hill with our senior congressional correspondent, Chad Pergram. Chad, great to be with you early this morning, my friend. Tell us the latest from D.C.
Well, Chanley, this was high drama in the United States Senate with Vice President Vance coming to Capitol Hill potentially to break a tie. They didn't have the votes to get across this procedural hurdle. This is just to start debate on the Big Beautiful Bill. This is not passage of the Big Beautiful Bill. This is just to start debate. And as you know, I always say it's all about the math. And they were short 3 votes. There were 50 noes on the board. All 47 Democrats had voted no. And there were 3 Republicans for most of the night. This vote was held open for 3.5 hours. This vote started at 7:31 Eastern Time tonight. The noes were Rand Paul, Tom Tillis, and Ron Johnson. But there was a lengthy conversation off stage with Vice President Vance in the office of the Senate Majority Leader John Thune, and eventually Ron Johnson flipped his vote. There were other senators who had not cast their ballots so far. Cynthia Lummis, a Republican of Wyoming, Mike Lee of Utah, and Rick Scott. But they eventually got them to yes, and Ron Johnson, who has been adamant against this bill, saying there's too much spending, said, okay, I'm at least, got some sort of promise here. I just asked a senator a few minutes ago, I said, what was the promise? to Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, and they indicated to me that they are not at liberty to say. So what happens next? We've got a long road ahead of us. Here's what's going on right now. Usually when they actually get on to an actual bill, what happens is they read just the title of the bill. Technically, from a very technical standpoint, they are supposed to read the entire thing out loud. Well, guess what? That almost never happens. They go through that, and then they simply ask unanimous consent. In other words, if all senators are willing, they go on to the next thing, and they go on to actual debate on the bill. Well, Chuck Schumer objected to getting rid of the oral reading of the bill. Back in the old days when they had, parchment paper and quills, there was only one copy of the bill. And so back in the, 18th century, 19th century, early 20th, that's when they had to actually just have that one copy. And if you weren't in the chamber to actually hear the bill read, you didn't know necessarily what was in it. So they used to read these out loud. Now we have these 100-page bills, sometimes more than 1,000-page bills. And so this is really just a dilatory tactic by Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader. This has been done before. Back in 2021, March 5th, 2021, Ron Johnson, the aforementioned senator from Wisconsin, he objected to the Democrats dispensing with the reading of a COVID-19 bill, $1.9 trillion, and he stretched out the process for 10 hours and 53 minutes. So this bill is bigger. We think that this will go on all night long, well into the morning tomorrow. We just don't know how long it takes to read this bill. And I should note that there are not limits or regulations, and this is actually, you'll find this in some of the standing orders of the Senate, on how loud the clerk must read. They've actually addressed this issue, and how fast or slow the clerk must read. And so there's several different reading clerks. If you look at the screen, there's a gentleman just kind of to the right of the dais there. He's reading this out loud, and he will read this in a sonorous tone all night long, and then they will switch to somebody else after, say, 45 minutes or an hour, and they'll get them some throat lozenges or Cepastat or whatever it is to keep them going. Now, tomorrow, here's what's going to happen. Whenever they wrap this up, they then go to up to 20 hours of debate. We don't think they're going to take that. It's going to be probably more like 10 to 12 hours. And then, Chanley, we go to something called a vote-a-rama. This is where they vote, and they vote, and they vote round the clock. This is why this process is so elongated here. Usually what happens in a vote-a-rama, the shortest one we've had in recent years, in fact, it was earlier this year, was just under 10 hours. The longest one we've had in recent years was just under 15 hours. So then they should be able to get, if you time all this out sometime Monday morning, maybe Monday midday, get to a final vote on the big, beautiful bill. Aha, but we are not even out of the woods yet. Then they have to sync this bill up, presuming it passes, with the House of Representatives. And there are a lot of conservatives in the House of Representatives who don't like this bill in this form coming out of the Senate right now. Again, they have that narrow majority in the House. I've talked about how this is about the math. We'll see if they can accept later this week, and remember the deadline set by President Trump is the 4th of July, to adopt the Senate version of the big, beautiful bill, Chanley.
So fascinating, Chad, and it sounds so complicated as you explain it to us. But as you said, this is just a procedural vote, right? So when this does actually make it through the debate process, we still could not have enough votes possibly to pass this and make this big, beautiful bill law, right?
Absolutely. It's not unprecedented to have somebody in the Senate vote on procedure to say, yes, I'm not going to stop the process now. I'm going to let it go forward. This is where we thought for a long time we might have a tie vote if they could pluck off those others and get them to 50-50, and then Vice President Vance could break the tie in his capacity as the president of the Senate. Didn't come to that, but he was certainly in the building since about 8 o'clock tonight. But during that vote-a-rama, that's where you have amendments. And so the bill is organic. It's changing. It's evolving. And maybe if somebody says, they put that thing in the bill, I like it. I can vote for it now. Maybe something is taken out or something else is put in that they don't like, and they say, I'm a no now. So that could interfere with the process. But this test vote tonight was key. And it's a signal to the House Republicans, that the Senate is forging ahead. We thought that this is what was going to happen. It just took longer than we expected, although maybe that should not be expected because on Capitol Hill, the timing is never exactly Swiss.
So I'm going to stop it right there. I think we got all the information that we're going to get as far as an update on where this One Big Beautiful Bill Act is in the U.S. Senate as we speak today. So just kind of wanted to recap what took place today. I started off by going into what is in the House version of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. The text for what I just read will be in the description box below in this video. And then secondly, we got a Fox News update on where this bill is at in the U.S. Senate. As you probably heard, let me just recap that. So the vote took place earlier Sunday, maybe 12, 1, 2 o'clock a.m. Overnight last night. The vote to get it, the bill to a U.S. Senate debate. Not sure how long that debate is going to go on. And then after the debate, it's going to go into a phase called Votorama, which the bill could be amended, things could be taken out, added to it, or whatever. It's going to transform. The bill is going to be fluid at this point. And then the next thing after the Votorama will be the final U.S. Senate vote on the bill, which basically means that the way it is written after the Votorama, the amendments and the subtractions and additions to the language in the bill as it currently stands, the final vote will be on that. Then after the final vote, you have to sync with the Senate bill with the House bill, and of course it has to pass muster with the House. So that's it in a nutshell, and thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.